review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Cross the Lines, a journey to complete the marathon Grand Slam, no other than Mr. William Thomas.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. William. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thanks again for the opportunity to chat with you today. So, I'm based in Singapore. I'm American, but I've lived over here for a number of years. I came to Singapore for what I thought would be a 2 or 3 year adventure, and that was about 13 and a half years ago. So, clearly, I like it, and I've been happy to stay. But prior to coming to Asia, to living in Southeast Asia, I spent about 21 years as an officer in the United States Air Force. And it was during the end, or towards the end, I should say, of that military career when I finally started taking my fitness and my health a little more seriously. And so I began running when I was 42 years old, which is a little later than most people start, but better late than never was my attitude. And within the first year, I had run my first marathon. Thinking that I would just do one and check it off the list, I went on to actually keep doing it and ultimately became one of the few people in the world to complete what's known as the Marathon Grand Slam, which is running on all 7 continents and at the North Pole. Something that I finished up back in 2016, and there's still fewer than 200 people globally who've done it. So it's something I've been proud of, and of course I've continued to run since then.
Definitely be proud. I'm very proud of you, Mr. William. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What inspired you to write Cross the Lines and share your marathon Grand Slam journey with the world?
So the idea came about, I'd say, about a year before I ran at the North Pole. So at this point, I had run on all 7 continents. Antarctica had been my seventh continent, which was a pretty amazing experience. And I was out for a long run one day, and you have a lot of time to think while you're running a long distance. And I started thinking about the things I had learned while running the Grand Slam. And I thought, well, gosh, maybe I should write a blog post about this. Maybe I should write a LinkedIn article about it. And then I thought, there's a lot of stuff there. Maybe I should write a book about it. And so that's what I did. And so I undertook writing the book and was working on it actually at the North Pole, writing about that particular race, writing that chapter, and then finished it up in the months after that and published it later that year.
And congratulations again, Mr. William. You began running at age 42 after the deployment to Afghanistan. What was the pivotal moment that made you decide to take up running?
So in 2007, I spent a couple of months in Kabul, Afghanistan with the military. I was there just on a special assignment. And when you were in Kabul at that time, the only things to do were work and work out. So I came back from there in better shape than I had been in before. I had lost some weight. I was just feeling better about myself. And I thought that I should continue doing this. And at a minimum, I should be out running on a regular basis. It's good for the heart, it's good for everything. But I also know from my own past experience that I could start that and then get distracted or get bored and give it up pretty quickly. So a friend of mine had just run his first marathon, and he said, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you sign up to run a marathon with me later this year and tell everybody that you're going to do it?" So
So I think Mr. William is disconnected for the meantime, and while we are waiting for him to reconnect, please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in its third season or fourth season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101 and Law 101. And of course, my love letters in its third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Text 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. And while we're waiting for Mr. William to reconnect again, please do visit my one of my audiobooks, people. Audiobooks, because they are one of the best sellers on Amazon or on Audible. And my Earth Fever, the unraveling climate and our race to restore balance, and my book 101 review, volume 1, highly recommended. And one of my self-help books, Thread of Existence, Weaving the Tapestry of Life. Life is too short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. And book 101 review, volume 3, suggestions, and book 101 volume 2 selected. Please do listen to them. And of course, one more of my self-help books, Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying. Please listen to them because one of the best sellers on Amazon. And while we're waiting for Mr. William, let's do listen to one of my audiobooks, sample of my audiobooks, people. Listen to
Chapter
Earth
1.
Fever.
The Climate Warning. Introduction to Global Climate Crisis and Symptoms. As the sun rises on a new day, the Earth wakes to a reality that has increasingly become cause for concern. Our planet, once a robust and flourishing ecosystem, now shows sign of fatigue and distress. The changes in our climate are no longer theoretical predictions confined to a distant future. They are observable, measurable.
Yes, I just want to make it bigger, people. Again, let's listen to my, I think it's my prologue of Earth Fever. Earth's fever, the unraveling climate and our race to restore balance, by Daniel Lucas, narrated by the author. Prologue. Once Earth's climate was a complex but stable web of interlocking systems where oceans, forests, ice, and atmosphere dance in harmony. Seasons followed their age-old patterns. Species thrived and humanity prospered blissfully, unaware of the delicate balance that sustained it all. But now the dance has faltered. The once graceful waltz has become a stumbling and tragic stagger. The world's climate, like a patient with rising fever, is showing signs of distress. Oceans warm, acidified, glaciers melt, storms rage, and species perish. This is no ordinary illness. Earth is unraveling, and it's humanity's doing. Earth fever, the unraveling climate, and our race to restore balance is an ardent call to recognize and understand the immense challenges we face. It's a journey through the science, history, politics, and human dimension of the climate crisis, presented with clarity, insight, and purpose. This is not merely a book about climate change. It is a rallying cry to join a global movement, a guide to navigate the complex landscape of environmental action, and beacon of hope. Hello again. Welcome back, Mister. Welcome back. And while you are not around waiting for your to reconnect, I
Yeah.
just promote my audiobooks plus my podcast. So let's continue this. And
Okay.
my last question is all about how the idea of completing the marathon grand slam, running a marathon on all seven continents and the North Pole first come to you.
So the idea behind the Grand Slam came about after I had run my first few marathons. I probably had three or four that were done. And I knew that I needed a goal. I mean, that was the whole point behind running a marathon in the first place, was to have a goal that would get me to keep running consistently and keep my health and my fitness up. But I had achieved that goal and I had run a marathon and I didn't have anything else. And so I started looking around for something that would be challenging, something that I couldn't accomplish tomorrow, but I knew that given enough time and given enough work and effort, I could accomplish. And I stumbled across the idea of the Marathon Grand Slam. It was conceived by a fellow named Richard Donovan, who had created the Antarctic Ice Marathon and also the North Pole Marathon. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, that's a good one. That's going to take me all around the world. That is going to take a few years. That'll keep me going for a while. And also, I couldn't think of any other way to get to the North Pole. So that one seemed like a good opportunity. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations and beautifully articulated, Mr. William. And thank you so much again for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. The book emphasizes the importance of the starting line over the finish line. Why was this perspective significant in your journey?
So I think we always think about the finish line. I mean, the crowd gathers there, the medals are handed out there. The finish line of a race, whether it's a marathon or Formula One or the Olympics or whatever, that's what everybody cheers at. But just getting to the starting line, actually beginning that journey, that takes a lot. And not everybody does it. A lot of people will sit around and think about, oh, I wish I could do that, or I wish I had done this, but they don't necessarily make the effort to get started. And it's not necessarily through a fault of their own. It's just that it's hard. It's hard to shake up what you've been doing. It's hard to try something new. It's hard to create a new routine and be consistent with it. But I think more effort needs to, or more thought, I guess, needs to go into what it takes to get people to that starting line and get them over it and get them moving forward. So, that was something that for me had been a challenge. Like I said, did not start running until I was 42. I kind of wish I'd started sooner, but nobody ever pushed me to that starting line until I finally got around to pushing myself there.
Which of the marathon in the Grand Slam, like Singapore, Paris, Rio, Cape Town, Sydney, Antarctica, and North Pole, was the most challenging and why?
I would say the most challenging was the North Pole Marathon, and that was the last one, of course, in 2016. Now, it was very similar in some ways to the Antarctic Ice Marathon. That one was done on a glacier in Antarctica, about 1,000 kilometers from the South Pole, in temperatures of about minus 30 Celsius. When we got to the North Pole, the weather conditions were very similar. What made it a bit more challenging was that about 12 hours after I got there, while we were waiting for the second half of the marathon group to arrive, the ice at our base camp cracked open. And when I say it cracked open, I mean the crack ran for about a kilometer and it ran across our runway. And so the plane with the other marathoners had to turn around and go back. It ran across the marathon course. And so they had to remap the course. I was supposed to be at the North Pole for about 36 hours, and I was there for 5 days while we waited for the camp staff to build another runway. So the thing I think that made that the hardest was not only the conditions underfoot, running on snow and ice, but just the stress of having been stranded at the North Pole for a few days and then hoping that we could finish the race and get out of there before the ice cracked open again. That's probably what made it the most challenging. And it was also the longest time that I spent running a race. I had hoped to run faster than I had in Antarctica, and I ended up running 20 minutes slower than I ran down south. Yeah.
Can you share a memorable moment from the Northfield Marathon that stands out in your story?
For me, I think what was most memorable about it was coming in the final 2.5 kilometers. So the way the race was mapped out, we had an 8 kilometer loop that we ran 4 times. And then we had a 2.5 kilometer loop that we ran 4 times. So that gave us our 42 kilometers. And it was on the final lap, that final 2.5 kilometer lap, when I realized that this journey that I'd been on for many years, and I had set this goal 6 years earlier, this journey that I'd been on that had really been the center of my attention, that had been the basis for every career decision, every decision about where to live, this journey was about to be over. And that was a very sobering thought. I mean, I was already tired, I was already cold, and now I had this weighing on me that, good grief, everything I've done is about to end. And I started thinking, okay, what comes next? And that's not really what I needed to be thinking about at that moment. I needed to be thinking about how to get through the snow and get to the finish line. But I was really reflecting back on the previous few years and all the work that had gone into getting here. It was a bit overwhelming, yeah, as I approached that finish line, I will say. So really, it was the last few moments of the race that were probably the biggest moment for me while I was there.
How did your military background as a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel influence your approach to training and completing the Grand Slam?
So it's interesting, and when I tell people that I was in the military, they think, oh, well, then surely you were up at 5 o'clock every morning doing 100 push-ups and running 10 kilometers with a full backpack, and that's not the way it was. When I was in the military, I had other priorities in terms of my career. Physical fitness was not my main priority. As long as I could pass the fitness test every year, I felt like I was fine. That idea of doing, just the minimum, even in just one area of my life, was something I didn't want to do again. And so part of what motivated me to be a runner was this idea of wanting to be strong in every aspect of my life. It doesn't have to be perfect everywhere, and it doesn't have to be the same amount of effort everywhere. But I don't want to be so focused on one part of my life that I let something else go by the wayside. So I think that's one aspect of my military time that has contributed to my attitude about fitness and about running since then. But the other thing is that as a military officer, I move to a new assignment every 2 or 3 or 4 years. Some of my assignments have been in very challenging places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And I had a sense of what I was capable of. So when I came to running, and especially when I came to the Grand Slam, and people said, my gosh, you went more than 40 years without being a runner, and now you're going to do this? What makes you think you can do that? Well, what makes me think I can do that is that I've done a lot of things that I didn't think I could do. And this is just a continuation of that. So I think some of those experiences I had in the military had showed me that I was capable of more than I realized. And so the Grand Slam seemed like something that would ultimately be achievable if I just put the right kind of effort into it.
The book mentioned 26.2 lessons learned from running marathons. What are the lessons that profoundly impacted your life beyond running?
It's funny you ask that, because I was out for a run this morning with a friend of mine who just took up running within the last month, and he's planning to run a half marathon later this year. And so a lot of what I went through in my first year, he's going through it right now. And I shared a lesson with him that is one of the ones in the book that I think really has been helpful for me over time, and that is run the mile that you're in. And what I mean by that is, it's important to have a plan and a long-term vision. I think those are essential. I spent most of my military career as a strategic planner, and so I'm definitely a fan of having a long-term goal and a plan for getting there. But in the moment, it helps to focus on what's right in front of you and not worry so much about what's going to happen down the road. So, in the case of this morning's run, I was telling him, look, we have this hill in front of us. It's about 500 meters. But after that, we've got a kilometer until we're done, and it's all downhill or flat after that. So I said, just focus on what's right in front of you, get over this hill, and then it's going to be easy. That works for me in a marathon. If I'm at kilometer 10, I don't worry about what kilometer 32 is going to be like. I worry about kilometer 11, what's right in front of me. And that's been very helpful in other parts of my life. As I'm searching for a job or doing something at work, yes, there are long-term implications of what I'm doing, but if I worry about the long-term stuff right now, I won't necessarily get the immediate stuff done. And so that's a lesson that I picked up during running, something that really helped me stay focused during a race that I've then been able to translate into my professional life, into personal relationships and friendships and other parts of my life. So yeah, run the mile that you're in, I'd say would be the most important lesson that I've taken away from this.
Were there moments during your journey when you doubted you could complete the marathon Grand Slam?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was after I'd moved to Singapore. I mean, I remember this very well. I moved to Singapore at the end of 2011. And at that point, I had done 4 of the continents. So I still had Africa, Australia, and Antarctica to go. And then, of course, the North Pole. So I was halfway done. But moving to Singapore was challenging. I was a civilian, so that was new. I was in a new country, so that was new. I had a lot of things going on that were difficult, and I remember thinking that with all of this going on in my life, gosh, maybe this Grand Slam thing is too much to be taking on. Maybe I shouldn't be worried about it so much. But I shared that with my friend Ethan, and Ethan is the one who originally said to me, why don't you run this marathon with me next year and tell everybody about it? Okay. Ethan was the guy who was there at the beginning. And I told Ethan about this, and he sent me a book. And he had an inscription in that book that it basically said, you've got this, don't stumble, take a breath, keep going. And that was what I needed. That was what I needed to hear, was that push. The book itself was interesting and was very inspiring, but the inscription in it was very valuable too. Yeah, and I really needed that push because I was kind of at a low place right then. Yeah.
Mr. William, what's the most unexpected obstacle you faced during one of the marathons, and how did you overcome it?
Well, in terms of the challenges during the races, I think it was actually my second race, um, which proved to be the most surprising to me. So let me back up a little bit. My first race was in Washington, D.C. It was the Marine Corps Marathon, which is a very popular race there. And when you get out and run that race, there are hundreds of thousands of people in Washington, D.C. who turn out to cheer you on. I mean, essentially, from the start to the finish, you have crowds who are cheering you on. My second race was only 6 weeks later, and it was in Singapore. And I had come to Singapore at that time for 4 months to teach as a Fulbright scholar on an exchange program at one of the universities here. So I ran the Standard Chartered Singapore Marathon. This one was very different. This one started at about 4 o'clock in the morning because it's very hot here, and so we want to run early. There is nobody out there cheering you on. And when the sun comes up, it's a lot hotter in Singapore than it is in Washington, D.C. And I had this idea in my head that I was going to start running marathons. And every marathon I ran, I was going to be faster. I was always going to be getting better. And that second marathon proved me wrong, because I was just, especially by around 30 or 32 kilometers, I was feeling the effects of the heat. I was feeling totally drained. I was walking, which I had not done in the Marine Corps Marathon. And it was just tough. It just really surprised me. And it took a lot of willpower to push myself over that line, over that finish line. And it caused me to question what I was doing, but it also caused me to question why I was putting such a big expectation on myself. This idea that I have to get faster every time is actually a little ridiculous, because there's going to come a point someday when you cannot get faster. And I should probably recognize that. But also, the conditions were very different in this race than they were in Washington, D.C. And I was still only 20 minutes slower. It wasn't that big of a deal. It's not like I couldn't finish. So I learned to kind of ease up on myself a little bit and set my expectations based on that particular event as opposed to where it fits in a continuum of events. So I'm glad I had that experience early, because as challenging as it was, and as much as it kind of threw me for a loop, it also woke me up to some realities about myself and about running in general. Yeah.
Your book described as fun and inspirational. How did you approach blending humor and motivation in your storytelling?
Well, I've spent about 8 years as a university professor. I taught at the U.S. Air Force Academy for 7 years. I taught at Georgetown University, and then I was a Fulbright scholar here in Singapore. Uh, and one of the things I found is that to keep your students' attention, you can't just have a dry, monotone style about you. Students are going to like a couple of different things. They're going to like stories, and they're going to like some humor. And one of the advantages at the Air Force Academy was that I was teaching cadets who were going to go into the Air Force. And of course, I'd been in the Air Force for a number of years myself. So I had plenty of stories to tell them. Um, but I wanted to do it in a style that they would receive well. So yeah, I became more of a storyteller as a professor. Then I took a consulting role here in Singapore, where once again I found myself in a storytelling role, and I just found that different audiences respond to different things, but all audiences respond to a little bit of humor, and I found that to be very helpful.
How was completing the Abbott World Marathon majors like New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Chicago, London, and Boston added to your running journey?
Yeah, that was fantastic, honestly. So I had run some of the majors already while I was still doing the Grand Slam, but I needed a new goal when I finished the Grand Slam. And so the Abbott World Marathon Majors was a pretty good one. Now, when I first started running the majors back in 2010, I ran the New York City Marathon. For regular runners like us, there wasn't a big deal made of it. For professional runners, it's sort of like the Formula One for marathon running. But for amateurs, a lot of us just decided, well, we want to run all of these too. And it was only later that the World Marathon Majors introduced a medal for finishing all six of the early majors. There's actually seven now. I have to go run a seventh one, it turns out. But that gave me a goal for about another 3 years after finishing the North Pole. That was a lot of fun, because the majors are some of the most enjoyable races in the world. There were people I know from Antarctica and the North Pole who also are running the majors, so I would see these friends at different races around the world. The majors were great. They were as a new goal to achieve. They gave me a lot of motivation, and especially ending with Boston. I mean, it's the oldest marathon in the world, and it's the big deal. It's the big show, and it was a lot of fun to be able to run that one. Yeah.
Mr. William, what advice would you give to someone inspired by your book to start running or pursue a big goal later in life?
I think one thing that I would share with them is this: that if you look at me and if you look at what I've been able to accomplish, realize that I am not an Olympic athlete. I am not an elite runner. I am not even very fast. Okay. There's nothing special about me, is what I'm saying. I'm a middle-aged consultant. And if I can get out and go to the North Pole and go to Antarctica, last year I ran a marathon on Mount Everest. I mean, if somebody like me can do that, then anybody looking at that story should realize that they can do what they set out to do also. They shouldn't let their age be a stopping point. They shouldn't let their friends or people around them tell them, oh, you can't do this. If they think they can, and if they want to do it, they should go for it. Because again, if I can do this, then they can do anything they set out to do. And I have faith in them. I hope they have faith in themselves.
For sure. Have faith in yourself, people. How did your
Yeah.
perspective on fitness and personal growth evolve from your first marathon to completing the Grand Slam?
I think one of the things that has been very valuable for me has been setting my own standards and setting my own expectations. As I continued running, and as I got to know other people in the running world who were pursuing similar goals, it would be really easy to look at them and say, well, gosh, they're faster than I am, or they're stronger than I am, or they're running triathlons and I'm only doing marathons. And I realized that when it comes to my fitness and when it comes to my health, I'm the one that sets the standards for myself, nobody else. So I don't let myself get influenced by what I see on Instagram. I don't let myself get influenced by what I see in the media. I focus on setting my own goals and aiming for those and achieving those and then setting new ones rather than letting other people set goals for me. And that's been good because I also have to realize that I'm older now. And when I started
Mhm.
running at age 42, I could run at a certain speed and then I got better for a few years. But I'm 59 years old and it's okay that I'm slowing down. I'm not stopping, but it's okay that I'm slowing down. And just because my 29-year-old friends are running sub 3 hour marathons doesn't mean I have to try and run a sub 3 hour marathon. And I don't have to feel bad that I'm not. I need to set my own standards for myself and my own expectations and then follow through on those. That's most.
Definitely. The book covers your multi year journey. What kept you motivated to continue running 3 to 4 marathons a year after achieving a Grand Slam?
So I think there are a couple of things that have kept me out there on the running path. But one is continuing to set new goals. So the World Marathon Majors were the next goal. Ultimately, the Everest Marathon was another one after that. So continuing to set goals and telling other people about those goals to provide some accountability, that gets me to stay out there. So that's kind of the push, I guess, to continue running. But the pull, what's pulling me to continue running, the internal motivation, is partly about my health. Um, like I said, I'm 59 years old. I get my annual checkups. My heart's in very good shape. The doctors can tell I run marathons based on the tests that they do. I know that it's helping me, and I want to stay in good health and stay in good shape. And so I continue to do that. The other thing that keeps me going, though, and this comes up every now and then because sometimes I'll be running a marathon and I'll think, I'm not sure how many of these I'm still going to do. you know, um, and I, which is not, by the way, which is not what you want to be thinking halfway through a 42-kilometer race. That's not very motivational. But one of the things that does keep me going is thinking, if I'm not a runner, then what am I? It's been 17 years now since my first marathon. Running is a major part of my identity. Some would say it is my identity. And I don't know what's going to happen if I give that up. So one of the things that keeps me going is just thinking that this is who I am. And there will come a day when I cannot run anymore, but today is not that day.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. William, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do visit my Book 101 review merchandise, people, because we believe on Book 101 merchandise where literature meets lifestyle. Book 101 merchandise is more than just a gear, it's a celebration of written word and the readers who live by it. And we have what? Lots of merchandise like, well, apron, mags, and many more. So please do visit Book 101 merchandise. And Mr. William, for readers who are not runners, what university or universal lessons or messages do you hope they take away from Cross the Lines?
I think the biggest message to take away.
I think Mr. William is being disconnected again. So, people, please do support Mr. William Thomas. This is one of a kind book that we need to support. Uh, cross cross the line. Just give me a minute, people, because I have also difficulties. Cross the Lines, a journey to complete the marathon Grand Slam by Mr. William Thomas. Please support him, and you can buy the books where books are sold. And again, thank you so much for being part on Book 101 Review. And please continue listening to my podcast or watch us, our live episode through all the social medias from all the social medias: Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, X, and on YouTube. So, Mr. Williams, for the last question, I should say. So, Mr. William, to wrap up our discussion for today, for readers who are not runners, what universal lessons or messages do you hope they take away from Cross the Lines?
I think a key message for anybody, and again, thank you, because you don't have to be a runner to take something away from this. I think the key message is that you are capable of more than you realize. And until you get out and push your limits, you don't really know where your limits are. It's easy to be told that you can't do something. It's easy for people around you to remind you of how old you are or what your limitations are, but they don't really know you as well as you do. So I would say get out there and push the boundaries. And it doesn't have to be running. It doesn't even have to be health or fitness related. It could be in your profession. It could be going for that PhD. It could be moving to a new country. It could be all kinds of things. Go ahead and take that chance because, like I said, you can do a lot more than you think you can.
Yes, don't afraid take the risk, people. Take the risk. Who knows? You will be successful for taking that
Yeah,
risk. Mr. William Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world through your book. Hoping for more and more and more empowering book like this to come, or books like this to come. So, Mr. William, can you please invite our listeners to support Cross the Lines?
absolutely. Anybody who is celebrating the written word, like you are, I think I'd like to see folks tuning in and listening to this, and of course, by all means, take a look at Cross the Lines. But any of the books that I think are discussed on this program, any of the other episodes, can add a lot to your life. So I encourage you to get out there and keep reading.
Keep reading, people. Reading, reading makes the world go round. And listen to Book 101 Review. So, Mr. William, thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.